What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to build my 2025 hunting arrow setup. It's going to be the same exact setup that I had last year. I never actually recorded like a full-length arrow build on those. I recorded one a couple of years ago, but I've gotten some better equipment since then, switched up the arrow setup a little bit. I think I could do a little bit of a deeper dive into actually building the arrows. So to start, just to give you some perspective on what I'm running and the specs on my bow, I'm a 26.5-inch draw. I know T-Rex arms. I'm 74, 75 pounds. And last year, I haven't gotten a chrono the new bow yet after setting up with new strings and increasing the poundage by 4 or 5 pounds. But last year I was at like 275 feet a second with the same arrow setup. So I'd imagine this year with the extra few pounds and some new strings, I should be maybe like pushing 280. Somewhere in that 280, 285 realm. But that's with a 440 grain arrow. It should be right in there, 435, I believe. But I will show you all that at the end. So to go over the components that we'll be putting together, I've got same arrows as last year. So these are Victory Rip TKOs. They're the .001, and they're in a 300 spine, which sits perfect for me. I could probably flirt with like a 350 spine if I really wanted to, but I'd rather overspine and just not have to worry about it. So 300 spine for these. And then on the front end of the arrow, I've got severs. So this year they just came out with, or last year they came out with the 1.5 hybrid, which is what I'm gonna be shooting out west. So that's this one here. And then for whitetail, I'm actually gonna be using their brand new Sever 2.0 hybrid. So I used the 2.0 a couple of years ago. And I think I shot 3 or 4 deer and they all died within 50 yards. So gonna keep the same deal going. I really like the hybrid setup with a couple little bleeders on there. I think it just helps open up a hole and really get that animal bleeding. So we're gonna toss those on the front. Components wise, I've always used the Easton head inserts. They just work really well. I don't think you can beat the consistency of having an internal system over the external system like a outsert. So we're gonna toss those in. I clip off the back half so it's only 50 grains. And then I put a 10 grain iron well collar on the front of it. So that's that here. I found it just kind of helps with like durability. So I've shot these actually like on my practice arrows and I've had them go into wood. No splintering or anything of the front of the arrow, just being able to pull it back out and reshoot it. And I think that has a lot to do with, one, the durability of the Rip TKOs, but also adding that collar on the front end just to disperse some of that energy. Then back half of the arrow, another tried and true for me is the AAE Max Stealth vanes. I'm gonna do all white for the elk arrows, and then I'm gonna do yellow for the whitetail arrows, just to switch it up a little bit. I did all white last year, so like to kind of go back and forth. And then I'm always shooting lighted nocks. I've used them the past 4 years now, and I don't think you can beat the ability to see where you're actually hitting. Without a lighted nock, it's kind of hard to see where exactly on the animal you're hitting unless you're really, really close, like within 20 yards. So once it gets a little bit farther distance, 30, 40, maybe even 50 yards for those that are comfortable out there, I think lighted nocks are the way to go because you truly get to see the arc of the arrow. And another added bonus is on the range. You can really tell whether your arrow is flying true or not, because if it isn't, that lighted nock is going to kind of go all over the place. And it's a lot easier to see that than it is to see on a non-lighted nock. So now that we've gone over all that, let's get into getting these out of the package and we'll cut the arrows down to length. First step in building the arrows is going to be cutting them down. So I got the arrow saw all put out. It's pretty convenient for being in an apartment like I am, where it's got a vacuum line to it. So you actually turn your vacuum on and it sucks 99% of the carbon right out as you're cutting. So it's kind of cool that way. Luckily for me, I've got an old arrow, so I know how long my arrows are going to be. So I can just use this to set the saw up. But if you don't, as a general rule of thumb, what I do is if my arrow rest is sitting here, I leave about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of carbon in front of, probably about 1/2 inch or so. Just give yourself some room in front of the arrow rest. So if the rest is sitting here at full draw, there's a 1/2 inch of carbon, and then you hit my arrow sleeve or the collar. Do whatever you're comfortable with though, because that puts the broadhead for me like right about where my fingers are, if not a little bit behind it. Some people are more comfortable, especially if you're shooting like a fixed blade, to have it in front of your fingers. Just do what you're comfortable with, and you can tune either one. But usually if you can and you're comfortable, I like it as short as possible. So when you're doing this, make sure that the knock that you have in is the same knock that you're using across the board. I just have the standard Victory knock, and then I'm gonna swap them all out later, but for cutting purposes at least, I know that I can use this to compare to all of the arrows in here. So to set this up, all I'm gonna do is this back piece here, if you loosen it up, can slide back and forth on this arrow jig or saw, and you just line the knock up right against the end, and then you want to go far enough up to where your arrow is going to hit the saw. So you could even go a little bit ahead of it, just so that because I have a collar on there, so I'm going to go just a smidge ahead so that I know that I'm cutting, and then all of them will be the same length after the collar. So right about there should be good. Perfect. All right, so this can go out of the way. And then the nice part with this saw is there is a vacuum line on it. So I can like suck away essentially 99% of the carbon that comes off of it, so it doesn't make a mess. But it's gonna get loud in here, so I'm gonna turn this on and I'm gonna start cutting these down. Again, I left the same knock on here. So let me turn this vacuum on. Make sure to use eye protection when you are doing this. I got my glasses here. Carbon in your eyeballs is not a good deal. All right, now that we're all cut down, nice and easy, we're gonna square both ends. So I'll bring you guys in a little closer and we'll start doing that. Next up, we're gonna square both ends of this arrow. I think it just helps make sure that the arrow flies super true. A lot of people probably don't think to square up the knock end, but I typically do. So I've got my arrow squaring tool out here, and then I've got some acetone or rubbing alcohol, whatever you wanna call it, to clean the ends with some Q-tips and some paper towel. But we can start with that. So first things first, I'm gonna take all the knocks out of these and just put them to the side. Now that knocks are out, I'll walk you through the first one, and then I'm just gonna fly through the rest of them, do a little speed run through them, just so you don't have to sit here and watch the whole thing. But to start, I'm just gonna take this arrow squaring tool, and I know that I've already cut the one end, so I got no problem. I'm just gonna line it up against the end of the sandpaper here. There's a little sandpaper disc on both sides. And I usually just give it probably 15, 20 turns. You're usually fairly on, so it's not too bad, and you'll figure it out kind of later, but just kind of give it a little bit. And then I will flip sides and do the same thing to the knock end. Knock end shouldn't take too much, so kind of do the same thing, but take your time now, it'll help you later on down the road. So sitting here. All right, so now that both ends are squared up, I'm going to take a piece of paper towel, throw that down, and then I'm gonna take a Q-tip and go inside of both ends of this arrow, just to make sure it's super clean. So I'll go in with the acetone first, then I'll take the dry end of that Q-tip and just give it a little bit more of a cleaning. This will help with getting your insert to actually bond well later on down the road. So again, just straight in there. And I take the dry side, clean it out, give the outside a little wipe down, and then we've got one done. So I'm gonna fly through the rest of these and then we'll get to the next step. All right, so now that we've got everything cut down, I'm gonna put new nocks in. So I took all of the nocks out to square up both ends. Now I've got my lighted nocks that I'm gonna toss in. Nocks don't really matter, but if you're creating the same arrow that you had prior, like I am, so I had hunting arrows already built, I'm building up a few more just to supplement. I wanna make sure that the fletchings and everything sit in the same spot. Is it super important? Probably not, but at least for my perfectionist, it just sits well with me. So I used the same lighted nocks last year when I went to go fletch the arrows, so I'm gonna use the same ones here. If I'd use, let's say like Easton nocks or AAE nocks when I went to go fletch them, I'm gonna put those same ones in when I go to fletch, just so that the fletchings sit exactly in the same spot that they did for the previous arrows. So what I do is I'm gonna go in, put all these nocks in, and I'm gonna orient them all the same way. So for me, I'm gonna put the switch for the nocturnal facing up, and then I have it where the rip TKO down the side sits right with the right side of the nock, just so it all looks flush. And then if I have to adjust later, I have to adjust in terms of like nock tuning, but at least for now, it makes all the fletchings sit in the same spot. And I changed my mind. I'm gonna go white fletchings. I think after having some blood on them last year, the white just shows up really well. You could really easily see what's going on. So for hunting arrows, I think this will work really well. And then I'm actually gonna make 2 of these arrows, more practice arrows, just because I need a couple more. So those I'm gonna use with the yellow, but white for hunting for sure. So let me get all these nocks in and then we'll go into actually putting the fletchings on. Now that all the nocks are in, all oriented the same way, I'm gonna go ahead and start throwing some fletchings on here. So I use the Arizona Easy Fletch, max helical to the left. I've clocked my bow before and it clocks to the left, so just to keep everything going the same way. You could really easily do that yourself. If you just put a little mark on your arrow, unfletched arrow, put a little Sharpie mark, and then stand maybe just far enough away from the target that you're not going to get a full revolution out of your arrow, and then see which way that Sharpie mark moves. So, for example, if you shoot it and it goes to the right, then your bow's clocking to the right. If you shoot and it goes to the left, then your bow's clocking to the left, and just use the same helical. Is it going to do much for you? Probably not in the grand scheme of things, but if you're going to be this perfect with everything else, you might as well keep doing the same thing. But that's besides the point. I'm gonna start throwing fletchings on here. So this thing's super easy. You just pop it open like that, and then you're gonna stick the 3 fletches in there. So you got the 3 veins. They just butt right up to the bottom there. And don't mind the fact that this thing is super dirty and needs to be cleaned. Throw it in there, then you take your arrow, just line it up the same way. And there's a little knock point on the bottom there, and you'll feel that once you stick it in there, it's not gonna move. And then the first step is to take this Max Weld pen, because I'm using Max Stealth veins, to actually clean the veins. Essentially, this is just an acetone, like Sharpie almost, but it does work pretty well. And if you don't use it, these veins will fall off. So just be thorough. Doesn't take a ton of time. And then take their Max Stealth glue. And you don't need a ton of glue. I'm one to sometimes go overboard with it, and then I got to clean up a bunch of excess. But just a few dots on the vein, and then just spread it out evenly. Make sure you get all the way to the corners. So those are going to be the corners are going to be the first place to peel. So make sure that top and bottom have enough, and then just a few dots throughout the vein. Sometimes it's good to have a decent light because you can see and get a little bit of a glare off of where all the glue is, so you can make sure that it's actually across the whole vein. Swirl it around a little bit. All right, and then super easy with this thing. Just make sure all the veins are sitting at the bottom there. You push up, push over, and then slowly let it clamp down. And then you just take the cap here, put it over the end, and then smash it down. And then we let it sit. So I usually let it sit. I'll set a timer on my phone for a couple of minutes. It doesn't take a ton of time. And then after we're done, or after those couple minutes is up, I'll come back and we'll take a Q-tip and just clean the excess glue off the outside of it, just so the arrow doesn't look all dirty. All right, 2 minutes is up. You can toss the timer away. And now we can uncap the jig, push up, over, and then it'll lock into place. And then just slowly peel away pieces. Just like that, we've got a fletched arrow. And you can kind of take a Q-tip with some Vaseline, or a Q-tip with some acetone on it, and clean up the excess. So otherwise you're going to be left with a bunch of white sort of stains on the arrow. All right, that looks good. And the last piece I'm going to do, just to make sure that these veins don't peel up, is I just put a dab of glue right on the front of the veins, just so the corners don't get peeled up. So it's not much at all, just enough to cover the edge of them. It keeps them from peeling up, and I've found it helps quite a bit. All right, and then that is a fletched arrow. So now I'm gonna get the rest of these done, and then we'll go to the next step. All right, now we've got all the fletchings on. Super tedious, honestly, my least favorite part of building arrows. A lot of times if I shoot through a vein, I end up waiting till 3 or 4 arrows are actually damaged to even refletch, but that's besides the point. Those are done. Now we're gonna go and toss inserts, collars, and the broadheads on. So to start, I've got a bunch of the Easton inserts here. I'm gonna break the package open, and then I've got to clip off the back end. So if we look here, it's gonna come with a few things. So for one, it's going to come with a squaring stone. Again, we already squared stuff, but if you don't have that little squaring jig, then you can use this. I'm just gonna throw it away because I had a bunch of them. And then it's got a hit tool, which I actually have a metal one from Iron Will that I bought that works a lot better. So again, I'm gonna throw this away too. But essentially you're just gonna stick, I'll show you later, but this will be replaced by a metal one that I've got. So I can throw that away. And then to break off the end of these, you could take a pair of pliers or snips or something. They're kind of a pain, so it'll take a second, but you just got to come in here and then slowly work through them. A lot of times I'll actually take the set of pliers, stick it in the bag here so that metal piece doesn't go flying, and then you can just kind of put your weight on it. Sometimes it'll get it to go, but sometimes they're a bit of a pain. All right, and just like that, I'm actually gonna repair one extra arrow, so I've got 13 inserts here. I had one pull out of a target for whatever reason, but I've got 13 here. You could throw the pliers away. And then I put these away. Just some extras. So 13 here, and I'm gonna use the Easton Hit Epoxy. I've used some hot melt in the past. It just never worked out for me. I've had arrows pull out of targets. If it works for you, I think it's a great idea, just because you get the ability to pull inserts out and then put them back in, but it just hasn't worked for me well, so I use the Hit Epoxy, one and done, and then you don't have to worry about it. The first thing you have to do though, if you're going to use the Hit Epoxy, please remember to do this, is you have to take all of your knocks out because it has to sit for 24 hours. And in those 24 hours, if you don't take the knocks out, when you seal both ends like that, you're gonna have an air bubble that gets trapped in the arrow, and it's actually gonna slowly push that insert out. So by the time you wake up in the morning, you'll actually have either the insert sitting on the floor, or it'll kind of push its way all the way to the end of the arrow. And so if it doesn't sit right perfectly where it's supposed to, it can be a real pain. But before we do this, one, I'm gonna take the knocks out, and then two, I'm actually gonna scuff up the inside of the arrows just to make sure that we really get a good seat between the arrow, especially with the Victory. It seems to be slicker inside. So I'm going to use, I've got this tool from Iron Will, so it's got a hit insert tool on one end and then this scuffing tool on the other. And then what you can do, or at least what I've done, is I'll take a cheapo drill, and then you can actually just put it on the end of the drill. I just clamp down on the opposite end, and now I can go into the end of each arrow and just scuff it up really good, and it works really well. You might want to make sure that you're using or going the correct way. So there's one done. I'm gonna do the rest of these. So drill dried halfway through, so just had to scuff up the last few myself, but that's no big deal. Just gonna put the tool off to the side, and now I'm gonna take all the knocks out real quick. Just leave those off to the side. All right, knocks are all out. I'm gonna show you a couple different ways to that I actually do this. So the normal way, where you're just gluing in, you just set the depth with the hit tool, and then let it sit. I'll do that for these 3 practice arrows so that if I do need to, I can pull the field points out and then use them as hunting arrows if I were to run out. But on all my hunting arrows, all I do is just to make sure that everything sits right and there's no real discrepancy between the insert and the actual broadhead itself. I will actually seat these on the broadheads before I ever go and insert them in there, and then I just glue the whole system in there. So it can't come out, you're stuck with whatever broadhead's on there. I've used the same system for a couple of years, so I don't really mind doing that. But again, if you use hot melt or something, you could pull it all out, but that's just what I've found works the best for me. So we're gonna do that. I'm gonna do the broadhead arrows first, and then we'll go to the 3 practice arrows in yellow. So I'll put those off to the side, and we will glue. So to start, before I do anything, I'm gonna take and just seat the brass hit insert with the severed broadhead. I'll do that for all of them before I go mixing up the epoxy. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is mix up the 2-part epoxy here, which all you gotta do is if you either have a pair of scissors or a razor blade, it shows you on the corner here, just fold it over and then cut that corner off. And then take a plastic bag or the plastic piece that came in, and you just gotta toss it on there and then mix it up. So there should be like a clear piece and like an almost like yellowish type deal. Make sure you get as much of it out as you can. And then if you take the corner of this and just mix it up, it should get cloudy, and that's when you know it's ready to be used. Doesn't take very long, just a little bit of mixing and then it gets nice and cloudy for you. And it doesn't take a whole lot of this to set the inserts in there, so make sure you get a paper towel too, because you're gonna have to wipe some excess. But there, like that's cloudy enough. Then I've got some paper towel ready. And what I'm gonna do is I actually use just a really small dab to glue the collar on, and then I'll put the broadhead in. So I just take a really small amount there. And then I'll glue that collar on. I'm gonna take the broadhead, get a healthy dose of it. And then I will try to index them all the same way. So I'll wipe the excess off first. And then I will take and see, I'll try to index them similarly, where if I have the RIP TKO logo down here, I'll choose a blade, whether that's, I'm gonna choose one of the bleeder blades, and I'm gonna try to get it to sit right in line that way. All right. Make sure it's seated all the way down, and then I can put this off to the side. And again, make sure that you're putting this on a perfectly level surface so that when it dries, everything dries correctly. But now we can move on to the rest of these. Okay, so the other three here that I said I'm gonna do the normal way, what you do is you're gonna take this hit insert and get that little bit of glue on it, or the epoxy, whatever you wanna call it. Try not to get on your thumb like I just did. And then you will put it in the end of the arrow, just like normal. But then you take this tool here and it's gonna set the depth for you. So you only wanna go in once. Don't like go in multiple times because you're gonna push it too far down, and then you actually will ruin your arrow because you won't be able to screw a broadhead or anything into it. But so you'll just go like this and kind of twist it on its way in. And it'll get it to set it right up against that end piece there, and then just slowly pull it back out. You can twist it on its way out too. And that's it. So then just double check where that insert's sitting, that it didn't come back out with it. And then like I do with the other ones, I'm actually gonna glue on, while I got it out here, the collar as well. And then this one even more so, you wanna make sure that you're letting it dry on a level surface. The other ones, because you're gluing the entire piece in, it's still important, but not as important. Where that one, if it moves at all, then you can't even screw anything into it. So that becomes a real problem for you. All right, so now all we gotta do is wait. I'm gonna leave this stuff to set overnight. It's about 3:45 right now, so I'll check in with you guys tomorrow. And then we'll get final arrow weight, just double check to make sure everything's spinning true, and they'll be set to go. And hopefully they will be sent through an Elk here in 50 or so days. So I'll see you guys in 24 hours. So it's been 24 hours. I let these things dry. They should be all set and ready to go. Again, I've got 3 of the practice arrows that I just set up normally, so I can actually just screw field points in the end of these. And then I've got my 9 set up hunting arrows. So I'm going to toss the nocks back into these. I'm going to spin each of the hunting arrows just to make sure that those broadheads are spinning perfectly. And then I'm going to, I'll give you guys a final arrow weight just so you can get an idea of what I'm shooting. So just gonna throw the nocks back in. And like I said, I like to take, there's a little piece here where the switch is on the nocturnals. I like to have that facing up, and then the RIP TKO facing to the right. All right, nocks are in. Gonna do some spinning. Now, if you took your time and really squared off both ends, usually I don't have much of an issue with spinning these. Maybe you have to do a couple tweaks here and there. And with gluing the whole insert together inside of there, I think it just helps with the squaring process. So usually I don't have to do much. So I'm gonna spin these real quick, but I would bet that at least half of them I probably won't even have to adjust at all. Yeah, see, like that spins perfect. So. And you're just looking for the tip of that arrow to not dance anywhere. So it should just kind of spin right on top of itself, which is exactly what it's doing here. The 2-inch ones are a little longer bevel. So if anything, if there's, the 1.5s are pretty easy. The 2s may give you some trouble, but even those are spinning super true for me. So right now I have 0 to make adjustments to. Hopefully I'm not jinxing myself. So that one's dancing a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll take the edge of it, stick it into the table here, and just bend it a bit. And then usually that can be enough to just get it to, sometimes it takes a few times. Doesn't take much. Yeah, so I could just use. All right, that's better. That one's good. That one's straight over the top of itself. Good. Good on that one. And perfect. Now that we're all spin tested, all good to go there. The one last piece that I will do to these, and I won't show you guys this because it's no need for you to watch, but I will take, and whatever way I'm going to index this arrow, I will write a little up arrow on the inside of that vein, so that when I am going to index it, it just is one less thing for you to think about, right? Because if you're in the heat of the moment, you got to knock another arrow, do whatever else. Like, it's not going to happen very often, but it is nice. Or you're in the dark when you're getting set up in that tree stand and you just want to knock an arrow. It's nice to have that little up arrow so you know which one to knock it to, and then you can just be perfectly set for yourself. So something I would advise you to do. It's helped me a little bit. Not a big deal, but just something to think about. All right, let me bring you guys around here and I will show you total arrow weight. So let's get you guys an arrow weight in a couple of these just to show you consistency's sake. So here is arrow 1. We're at 444.4. Arrow 2, 445. And then arrow 3, so this is with the longer broadhead. Same broadhead weight, but just a little different, 446.4. All right, that's it. So we're all set up. 2025 arrow build is done. We're within a grain or so with each of these arrows, which is totally perfect for me. Consistency's good. Didn't have to spin them all that much. Really just had to bend the one to get it to spin right, but the rest of them were perfect. Hopefully in about a month and a half, I will be sending one of these through an elk, And then a month after that, hopefully I will be sending some of these through some whitetails over the course of that season. Let me know your arrow setups in the comments down below. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video.